Okay. Hello everyone. I'll be taking you through Archetype, which is a tier 2 machine on the HackTheBox starting point series. Um, I guess I need to share my screen because I'm pretty sure I'll forget to share. So, I bet you guys can see my screen and it's clear. Um, okay, so I'll start by connecting to the VPN. Then let's create a directory called Archetype in the browser. Been telling guys to use Bitwarden for the longest time. Um, Jokes on you. Anyway, so you go to starting point, tier 2, look at archetype. So we spawn this machine. Gonna give it a while, so let me copy the um, port scan script here. In the meantime, also, Meshak, you're replying right now. That's interesting. Did you hear the question right now, or um, I'm kidding. What did I want to ask? Oh yeah, have you guys like done the new box by the way? So it's a really good one. Anyway, so we got the IP here. So I can run bash, give it the name of the script, then give it the IP, and see we have 4 ports open, so we can do further enumeration. I'll do tag SCV to enumerate the services further. Then um, what else? I guess I'll do T4 and I guess give it the IP, then do it like this. Tag V. I get a feeling this syntax is wrong, and I have no idea why, but I guess yeah, we can just run it. Oh yeah, I need to give it the ports that I found. So these 4 ports. Yeah, that's what I thought. So there's 135, 139, 1433. So here I need to give it the ports. So I do 135, 139, 445, and 1433, which I believe is mssql. So I can run this. And if anyone is just curious why I used the script to do the top 1000 port scan, is because whenever I used to do the port scan with nmap, it wouldn't give me the the results nicely or something like that. So I just use the simple script. So there's RPC and there's SMB, which is 139 and 445. Well, technically 139 is NetBIOS, but I just say SMB as a collective name to call 139 and 445. Then 14.3 we have the Microsoft SQL Server 2017. So yep, and then we note that it's running Windows Server 2019. So if I were to find any, let's say, if I were to have an SE impersonate privilege once I get a shell on the box, I'd know that I'd run, print spoofer. Um, yeah. So we can start by enumerating RPC. So I'll do it like that, give it the user, tell it it's null authentication. Um, there's just one problem with this syntax. Like when it comes to SMB client and you do it like this, you give it the IP and then you tell it null authentication. Most guys think null authentication is this, like you give it a blank user and a blank password, but ideally null authentication is just using the user on your box and then a blank password. So it's not really a blank user and a blank password. And that is why when you use crackmap exec and you give it a blank user, sometimes it just doesn't work. And then you give it a random user and then it works. So null authentication doesn't mean a blank user. So where were we? So I'm supposed to give you the IP of the box here. We could try enum dom users, which is supposed to just tell us like some of the users on the domain. And that says access denied, right? So I could try like guest with a blank pass, like that. Do enum dom users, and that doesn't work, right? So we go on. I think there was SMB, so we can try list the shares with null authentication. So I do dash or dash L, sorry. I think that's good. So now we're listing the SMB shares, right? Guess I can close this. Taking some time. Okay, so ideally, when I look at this, I know that there's only one share just because by default you can't read the admin and C share. Only admins usually have access to those shares. Then IPC share is just a default share with like there's nothing really useful in IPC share. It's just a default share on a domain. So the other thing I do now is use crackmap exec, and I want to see the whether I have read access to the backup share, right? So I'll just say user is guest, password is blank, and then I do dash dash shares, and let's see what we have. So it tells us the domain, it's Archetype, and what else? So we have we do have read access to the backup share, but then crackmap exec sometimes has false positives with this because sometimes you have read access to the IPC share and it doesn't say. Again, why am I talking about the IPC share yet? I said it doesn't have any, mostly doesn't have anything useful. It's because when you have read access to the IPC share, it's very easy to do things like RID brute forcing to enumerate users. So I'll go back and check if I can access that share just to be sure. Can say, oops. So IPC. And I do have access, although I'm not allowed to list anything, right? But this is still good. I still have access, right? I guess crackmap exec just tries to do like dir and says like it doesn't get anything, so it just says you don't have read access. Yep, I guess basically you don't. So let's try do an RID brute, right? And what do you mean by doing an RID brute? So every domain has like a SID for you know um, each security principle on the domain, and by this I mean like you have users, you have administrators, you have enterprise admins, you have I guess printers, you know, yeah, such things. So every I guess person on the domain is recognized using a SID, and a SID a seed of one user is basically like the domain seed, and then it just adds the RID of the user. So see this 1001 is the RID, the relative identity, I guess. So this for for the specific user. But then the seed of the user would be the seed of the domain and then dash the RID of the user. You could watch IPSEC's video on, I think it was Scrambled, to get a better understanding of this. So we have, I guess, how many users? Useful users anyway, we have, I guess, three. There's admin, there's guest, and there's the SQL service user, right? Okay, this is good. Yeah. Um, is that person really asking a question? Or just let me just mute. Okay. So it's like, all right. So we know that now we can. I guess we can just have users. And I mistyped that. Say administrator, guest, and the SQL service. So this is a service account for the SQL service that we saw running on port 1433, right? So this is good. We can go access the backup share that we saw, like we had read access, and see what we have. So there seems to be a config file, which looks good. If you Google about this file, I think you'll see the hint of uh, an XML configuration file for the MSL SQL server. Yeah, so we can get this file and see its contents. Yeah, it looks like XML, and if you look closely, it says the ID is for the SQL service account, and the password is megacorp123. I've seen this password somewhere. Where was it? I can't really recall. Megacorp sounds it must be one of these AD boxes, maybe sauna or remote, I guess. Yeah. So we do have creds. So you could say SQL service, um, then the password. Oops. There you go. And we could try login to the MSQL server, right? So normally add use in packets MS SQL client. You've already um, the autocomplete is already giving up the syntax. So I give it the domain, I give it the user, and then put a colon, I give it the password, and then I give it the IP, which was this one. All right. So we have domain that we saw by running crackmap exec. We know the user, we know the password, and give it the IP, right? So this should work. And it says login failed. I'm pretty sure those creds are correct, right? So whenever you see this, just add this flag Windows auth. And you basically were trying to tell it to use Windows authentication, and yeah, basically, I guess. Um, so now this should work. So we run it again, and we get logged in. If we type help, we'll see we can run a few commands. Exit, we don't want to run that. There's enable XP CMD shell. So if you type XP CMD shell, because this helps you like run commands on the SQL server, right? You'll say, I mean, you'll see that it says the SQL server blocked access to procedure XP CMD shell, right? But remember, you logged in as the service account for this service, right? So you should be able to enable, like re-enable the, what should I call it? Component, I guess. So if you run enable xpcmd shell and then run xpcmd shell again, now you can see that you can run it. So normally, okay, now how do you get a shell now? How do you like, how do you run commands here? Normally what I do is I run nisham and it displays a command. Normally I think I use this. when I guess I'm just trying to get a shell. Yeah, but I also use it in this case. So it's doing PowerShell, then saying no profile, then um, setting the window to hidden, then passing the encoded command. And you can get this by going to revshells.com. So for me, it's kind of like automated. So it has like, it sets my IP for the VPN that I'm connected to, and then the port that I want to listen on. By default, it's 9001. And yeah, pretty much. So if you go here, you go to, see, PowerShell 3. Yeah, it's this one. So it's the exact same thing. Yeah. So I can copy this now. You can just do clip, and then I do xpcmd shell, and I pass this, and I should be able to get a shell, right? So I'm listening on port 9001, running this, and we got a shell. And also, there's one other thing here. Other times you'd find maybe that you can't enable the xpcmd shell utility. So there's a way you can try to access a share on your box, and then that way you are doing some sort of NTLM relay, and then you get the user's hash that's running the SQL server. I think that was in some IPsec video here. Let me check. IPsec.rocks, SQL. Let me do XP. This one, query a box. There was that thing. Um, he couldn't really. So when he logged in to the SQL server with the creds he had, he couldn't enable xpcmd shell. So instead, what he did, he used xpcmd tree to access his, a fake share, that started by responder, and then he captured the hash of the user running the SQL server, and then when he logged in as that user, he was able to um, use xpcmd shell. So we are the SQL service account, and we saw this is the only user on the box from the RID brute force that we did. There was administrator, guest, and this user. So basically, we could read the user flag, right? So users SQL service desktop user.txt, and we get the user flag, right? Easy. So how do we get the root flag? Remember when I said it's running Windows Server 2019, right? So I do like who am I priv and see, oh, we have the SE impersonate privilege. Whenever I say this, the first thing that comes to my mind is potato. Um, yeah, so if you know guys like Antonio Coco on Twitter, um, they're the guys who came up with Juicy Potato. Um, but I always look at what is it? I look at the OS and I look at the architecture. So I already know it's a Windows Server 2019, right? But what's the architecture? The architecture is it's a 64-bit machine, right? So whenever I see anything Windows Server 2016, Windows Server 2019, I'd go and look for print spoofer, and this is supposed to leverage that privilege that we have. Um, let's see, it says abusing SE impersonate on Windows 10 and Server 2016 and 2019. So this should work, right? Um, this by Itman. I think he's also the developer of Prevesk Check. So I always run that as well when I'm trying to Prevesk. So we know it's a 64-bit machine, so we get the 64 version. Can do a wget here, and then spawn a server, HTTP server, and then I guess let me just go to his. desktop directory and drop the file here. So put 8000. What's the file again? Let me see. So print buffer 64 and then just output the file. We are in PowerShell, so that's why I used curl. Maybe some of you would be like, he's using curl, he's not on Linux. Nah, I'm on PowerShell, so I can use curl. So the way I run this, I just do print spoofer, then I say 64, then I guess -i, then -c cmd.exe to spawn an interactive shell as system, and this should work, right? And it doesn't. It says, so it was listening on the named pipe and then it just didn't work. Normally I'd run this 2-3 times because sometimes you may run it and it doesn't work, then you run it the second time and it works, or the third time. So let's run it just again for sanity. And I think with most of these potato exploits, I guess it's just forging a system token and then passing it to the create process as user API. So I guess that allows you to run commands as the administrator. Okay, so this failed. Um, at this point, I'd leave it at that because there's nothing much I can do here in terms of like debugging. I guess you could debug, but then this is starting point. Normally we don't debug even if it's like a hack the box machine. Maybe that's not the intended path, so it just doesn't work, right? Um, the other thing I do is check the what's it called? The PowerShell history. So it's always a good place to check just to see if um a user left something there. So just think of it as the bash history on Linux, but now for PowerShell. So let me get the command here because I don't have it offhead, of course. I would be lying if I did. So I normally like to run it like this. So I say cat n $n, and that says just use my session. So I'm running as the user SQL SVC. So I don't have to do like C users then SQL SVC. I just do cat n. So updater, Microsoft Windows, PowerShell, PS readline, console history.txt. So let's see whether there's anything interesting here. And we get something. So it seems whoever was here was trying to access the backup share, right? And I guess they were mounting it on this drive, and then they were trying to access it as the user administrator, and the creds are here. So that's great. Um, I guess now we have the admin's password. So now we could just use like psexec and then log in as system. I wanted to talk about like the things I'd do once, maybe if I ran this and I didn't get anything. The other thing I'd do is like look for an unquoted service path vulnerability. So normally, I don't know if this will work actually. Let me see. Just to see. Yep, I'll run this and let's see what it says. Yeah, it's all fumbled up, but normally when you're looking for unquoted service path, you look at the path name, and if you see like it's unquoted, there's a likely chance that you could abuse that. So how does it work? Okay, so Windows is finicky on how like it tries to access a file when you give it a path that you know, isn't quoted. So let's say, yeah, let's actually look at this. So if this was unquoted, like without the quotes, the way Windows would try access SQL browser.exe is like this, yeah? It would do C program.exe, and then it doesn't hit anything. Then it goes to C program files Microsoft.exe, and then it doesn't find anything, and then this one doesn't have a space. So anywhere that has a space, it tries to look for the name of the binary as the first how do I call it? The first word in the space on that path. So it would go to 90, then shared, then finally find SQL browser.exe. So how you would exploit this now is you can place a file here. If you had write access to, I guess, this folder, you could place a file in this folder called microsoft.exe, and then you'd just restart the service, and then you'd get a shell as system. You'd but then you'd have to check the user the service is running as. So if you see like it's running as local system, you can get a system shell that way. Yeah, that's pretty much. Then I check for like always installed elevated, or most of these things are automated by stuff like previous check and yeah, scripts like that. Anyway, so we got the admin password. Where is it? Here we go. And we could use psexec as as any in-packet tool. You first give it the domain. So do archetype, then administrator, give it the password. And the reason I enclosed that in single quotes is because um, the exclamation mark is a byte character on bash. So um, that would just fail. It would interpret everything up to here. So you won't be able to log in. Let's give it the IP. How does in-packet psexec work? Well, first of all, you need to have read access to the admin share. So actually, let's see we have read access to that share with the creds we have. So SMB, give it the IP, tell it the user is admin, give it the password. The password's here. Okay. And then say shares, right? We want to see whether we have read access. Actually, it should be read write because it's gonna drop a file in that share. Yep, we do have read write on both the admin and the C share, right? So this is good. This is now why we use in-packet psexec because give me a sec. Let me just copy the IP. So what this basically does is it accesses that share, then using RPC and SMB, it's able to create a service using the Windows Service Control Manager API, I think, and then it creates a named pipe, and that's how you can run commands. Yeah, like the shell it drops in, it's just like a named pipe. So that's how you're able to now run commands as the admin user. That's just the skeleton of it, I guess. So let's run this. So it's requesting shares, found a writable admin share, dropping the file, creating the service. Here where it's running the service manager, then it toggles the service, and then now we have a shell, I guess. So we could now type users administrator desktop root.txt, and that's pretty much the box. So that was it. So I guess using the SE impersonate privilege wasn't the path that was intended for solving this machine, so that's why it didn't work. You'd find that mostly actually on HackTheBox machines. So sometimes you get a shell as the web user, and um, you have the SE impersonate privilege, which was maybe unintended. So they patched that, and then guys trying to do it after, like it just doesn't work. So yeah, pretty much. We can go maybe like answer the questions. Which TCP port is hosting a database server? That would be 1443. Was it 33? I guess. Let's see. Yep. What is the name of the non-administrative share available over SMB? That was backups. What is the password identified in the file on the SMB share? So let me see if I can recall this password. It was mega, because I swear I've seen this password a couple times. Cop 123 bang, like that, I guess. Is it a zero here? Nah, I got it wrong. So let's see. What file was this? Prod. So it's without the bang. So there's no bang here. Nice. So what script from in packet collection can be used in order to establish an authenticated connection to a Microsoft SQL server? That would be mssql client.py. So there is the Python, I guess both of them. Let me see. What's which in packet, because I didn't use the Python one. Is this the binary, or it's just like it's a Python script as well? Yeah, I think it's also a Python script, so it's just the same thing, just renamed to in packets MSL SQL client. So, what extended stored procedure of Microsoft SQL Server can be used in order to spawn a Windows command shell? That would be XP shell. What script can be used in order to search for possible paths to escalate privileges on Windows hosts? That would be WinPs. I didn't run this because normally they're usually things I do before I run WinPs or Previous check. They're usually like low hanging fruits. So like sometimes running WinPs can slow you down. Maybe if it was an unquoted service path, you'd have to go through a lot of output before you get that eventually. So there are things you just need to start out with. So what file contains the administrator password? Let's see. ConsoleHistory.txt, I believe. So let's copy this. Have it here. What's the user flag? That was way back. There we go. And then the root flag. Submit. Yeah, and that was pretty much the box. I actually wanted to look at something, and then I just realized once I submit the root flag, it closes my what's it called? My session for the box. So I have to start another one. But basically, I wanted to say like a good tool to run in terms of enumeration for SMB is Enum for Linux. And Enum for Linux, I guess it's an old Perl script. I guess the newer version is Enum for Linux NG. Now, the problem I have with Enum for Linux NG is it's not really good at doing an RID cycling enumeration thing. So like there's a box I was doing and I ran Enum for Linux NG and it wasn't able to identify that there was another user called Rascal. And then when I ran the older version Enum for Linux, um, it was actually able to get it by doing an RID cycling, I guess, attack. So I guess know your tools, run a couple tools, if you will. Um, yeah. So that was pretty much the box. Are there any questions? No
John,
questions.
hi.
Hi, what's up?
That was a nice session.
Hmm.
Very good. Guys, do ask any question you have in regards to the box. Yeah, before we end the session.
Yeah. Do you all have any question? I guess there's no question. That's good. That's really good. I guess you all understood everything from enumeration to wait, what? Uh, to using XPCMD shell, to getting a shell, to checking the console history, and getting a shell as admin. Wait, what?
Can see someone is typing. Awesome.
I think someone's trying to talk, or it's are you doxing us? Huh? Eh, um, I can't hear you properly if you're trying to tell us something. So yeah, I had someone call
Uh,
me. Uh-huh.
yeah, I've
Uh-huh.
got a question.
Uh-huh.
So let's say you've already gained access on user access when you're doing a box, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And this
what are
is
the
on Windows or Linux or both.
Windows?
Okay, okay.
What are the steps that you will take so that you may be able to escalate your privileges to root without doing WinPs? Yeah.
So the very first thing is it's a really bad habit. I usually like checking for the uncoded service path. Wait. Even before I get there, I check my privileges, like what I did. Like, yeah, I did for my priv, just to see the privileges I have, whether I can leverage a C impersonate or a C backup privilege, because you can also leverage that. Um, the next thing I do is I look at my groups, like what groups I'm on. So if you have a proper understanding of the, Active Directory, if you see yourself in the account operators group, then you know very well that you can change the password for another user um, on the machine. So that's also something good to check. And then now I check for uncoded service path uh, vulnerability, and then the next thing I'll check is no, install always elevated vulnerability as well. What else do I check? There's something else I check. I check for, oh yeah, saved auto logon passwords. That's also a good thing to check. That actually WinPeace does for you. But then there's a way to check it by querying the registry. Um, what else do I do? I guess after that, especially if it's like an AD machine, from there you just run like Bloodhound and then see if you can escalate to maybe another user. It doesn't have to be admin. Yeah, pretty much. Um, yeah, I guess watch more IPSEC videos, understand his thought processes in terms of doing previous, and you'll be good. Oh, also, in terms of Shayak Me as well, by the way, I've noticed, um, you see, the guy who comes up with insane Windows machine on HackTheBox, Andreas, he came up with Sekimet, he came up with Anubis. There's another one, I think. He has like three machines. So on TrackMe, he also has nice Windows machines that you can try out. Um, yeah, there's a lot to learn there actually. So you could also try those ones as well. But I think only one of his machines, I think Ra, is the one you can do like without VIP access. So the rest, like Ra2, I think Orestes, you need to have uh, VIP access. So yeah, also a good place to check as well. And yeah, just try learn Active Directory. Very important. Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
yeah. Any other question?
John.
Yeah, what's up?
Oh, hi there.
Hi.
Uh, I liked this. It's kind of cool.
It's
I
kind
have
of.
a yeah. No, I mean, it's really cool. By the way, I learned something out there.
Uh-huh.
I have a lazy question.
Uh-huh.
I saw you using something like red line wrapper. with the netcat.
Uh-huh.
I'm being lazy, and I would like you to give me an overview of what exactly that is. What does it read like a wrapper? What's that in simple terms?
Uh, I guess to be honest, it's like stabilizing your Windows shell. So I'm not entirely sure if it gives you like stuff like auto completion. See, like how you stabilize a shell on Linux, I guess it does the same thing, but there's a proper way of doing it. There's a script, a PowerShell script by who's this guy? I've forgotten, but yeah, it's basically just supposed to stabilize my shell, pretty much. Um, I've
Okay,
used it
cool.
for a while, but I've forgotten w- I've forgotten the capabilities it gives you, like maybe auto completion. Yeah, but that's pretty much what it does.
Okay, thank you. I wanted the idea, and you've done perfectly. I'll definitely check it out. Thank you.
All right, all right. Someone's asking why I don't use Tmax. Because it looks, because I mean, IPSec really promotes Tmax, but I really don't like it. It's actually the same reason I don't use Vim. Everyone asks me like, why don't you use Vim? And it's always the same reason. I hate key bindings, honestly. So that's the reason I don't use Tmax. There are a lot of key bindings. I don't know to split a screen, to rename the session. There's just so many things going on. Guys like to use Terminator, but again, Terminator looks awfully disgusting, so I also don't use Terminator. So what I'm using is a lightweight terminal called QTerminal, and then I've customized it a little bit just to look good. Um, yeah, you could also use like Alacrity, but the problem I have with Alacrity, yes, it's a fast terminal, but then like there isn't any splitting feature. Like you can't split windows. So the only way, if you want to use another terminal or even use tabs, you can't use tabs. So the only way to use another terminal, as in, is to spawn another one, literally. So you have like two terminals and then maybe the browser. I don't like that. So I like working with tabs and splitted screens. Just maybe, if I've started a HTTP server and I want to quickly check the name of the file, I just split the screen and check it. So yeah, I guess it's just preference. Tmax is a lot of work. Yeah. Any other question? Could you kindly explain null authentication again and anonymous login? So first things first, anonymous login is paired to FTP. So, in FTP, if you have anonymous uh, login access, you can pass anonymous as the username and password, or like how I like to do it, you just pass FTP. It works either way. So what is null authentication now? So null authentication basically is you're trying to connect as a user who doesn't exist. Um, yeah, I guess that's actually the best way to put it, because like I said, null authentication, guys usually think null authentication is passing a blank user. Uh, that's actually not the case, because I think IPSec explained this really well. I can't remember the box, but he talked about it. He started Wireshark and then he tried using SMB client now.
The box is
Uh,
called Waste. It's called Haste. Sorry, Haste.
Perfect. So yeah, so he used Wireshark and then he could tell that it's using actually his user. So it was doing something like IPSec / workgroup. So it's not really null as people try to understand it as, because null, let's say in pawn means you know x00 as in nothing. So null authentication really is just trying to authenticate as a user who doesn't exist. Yeah, and that way I guess you get access. So yeah, there's a difference between null authentication and anonymous login. Anonymous login is FTP, logging in as anonymous or FTP. Then null authentication is just logging in as someone who doesn't exist, pretty much. Because you'd think that maybe if I passed a random user, maybe if I did like crackmap exec SMB, I give it the IP, then I say the user is Magenjutsu, you'd think that that would fail, but it would actually work because that's null authentication. So I used guest just because I guess it's just a habit. But ideally, you can just pass in any user, so that's null authentication. Like it won't validate anything. Yeah, pretty much. I hope I've explained that properly. Any other question? Okay. I guess there's no other question. Awesome. So yeah, that was the session, guys. I guess Phrase, if you wanna say something.
At the moment, I don't have much to say,
Uh-huh.
but thank you for the great session.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think we'll be meeting on Friday. Yeah, Friday for Box Fridays. Ways will be taking us through Absolute. This will be an insane one.
Oh yeah, I'm excited for that one. I actually thought it was next week.
Yeah,
So it's actually this week.
no,
Okay,
not
cool.
this week Friday. The
Awesome, awesome.
poster should be going up tomorrow. Yeah.
Cool.
Uh,
Yeah, so thank you guys for joining. Hope you enjoyed the session. Hope you learned something. Uh, yeah, I guess that's it. So take care, guys. Have a great time and peace.
Alright, bye. Bye, guys. See you on Friday.